I think is the best running back choice as far as consistency out of that 49ers offense. And then finally, if George Kittle is out, I still think that Ross Dwelley is a fantasy option. The Packers give up the fourth most amount of fantasy points to tight ends. And so Ross Dwelley put up a couple of touchdowns last week, was getting open when he needed to. And so I think that he is good enough to put up those kind of numbers, to put up decent streaming numbers for tight ends, again, in a very scarce position in fantasy. So I think my heart prays that the Packers win. I think that they actually could pull off the win in this one. Even with it being in Santa Clara. So I am going to go with the Packers in this one. I think this will be a tough-fought game. So I'm going to say 21-17 Packers over the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm going to go 49ers on this one, 27-24. I'm not so sure I trust Rodgers either. I mean, when the Packers get their points, they're doing it on the ground.
True.
And you're right, Rodgers is an uncomfortable option, that's for sure. Which leads me to the game where my backup quarterback to Rodgers is my starting quarterback over Rodgers, if that makes sense. And that's Tampa Bay against Atlanta. I have Jameis Winston, and who did decent, but he's one of those guys that's feast or famine, like a home run or a strikeout. He throws a lot of interceptions, but he gets a lot of yards. Now, what I like about Winston is he's got a lot of good wide receivers, too.
He does, and really, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, it's been interesting to see how that's worked out. He's actually been targeting Cameron Brate so much over the last few weeks as well, really to the detriment of O.J. Howard. It's been the Cameron Brate show as far as tight end goes in Tampa Bay. With this game, we're going to, starting off with, really to get into it, starting off with the Falcons, starting off with the Buccaneers. They are away. So, Buccaneers, Winston, I think, should have a decent game. Again, he is going to be not necessarily feast or famine, because even when he throws a lot of picks, he throws for a ton of yards and usually still throws for one or two touchdowns in the game. So, the Falcons' defense, I think, could be a solid team to stream as far as defense goes because of that. They could get, a defensive touchdown off of a pick six, come up with a couple of turnovers. And so the Falcons are a decent pick for a streaming option. Ronald Jones, he's kind of still, I think, a desperation play in terms of running backs. Evans and Godwin, I think he still start. And I still think right now it's Cameron Brate over Jordan Howard as far as the tight ends go. As far as Atlanta goes, Ryan has been on fire the last couple games. I think that continues, especially against the Buccaneers team that gives up the second most amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks, and they really haven't done anything to stop that in the last couple weeks. You look back at, I want to say last week against the Saints, they were giving up a ton of yards. A couple weeks ago against the Seahawks, they were giving up a ton of yards and touchdowns. So I think this is going to be a huge offensive game for the Falcons, for Ryan, for Julio, and for Calvin Ridley. And again, we talked about the possibility of Hooper coming back this week. He is practicing as if he might be back. I would, be careful with that. I would have a backup option just in case Hooper is, like a game time decision and doesn't play. In terms of this one, I think the Falcons win it. I think, another offensive explosion. So I'm going to say, 38-24 Falcons.
Yeah, I'll go 34-28 in favor of Atlanta. So I think we're in the 30s. Winston gets his yards, but the big question is how many picks did he throw?
Yeah.
All right, let's take it out to Western New York, where the Denver Broncos are going to take on the Buffalo Bills. You have Josh Allen against the Broncos, who actually gave Minnesota a fight last week, but came up a bit short.
Yeah, I was somewhat disappointed in the last little bit of the game. For me in this one, the Bills are very good on defense in all aspects except against the running game. They're very, very middle of the road against the run game. So I think that in terms of the offense, Philip Lindsay has been the one that they've talked about getting more carries over Royce Freeman. Lindsay's been the one who's been much more productive with the carries that he gets, and so I think that that's really not only the best option for fantasy, but if the Broncos are going to have any success, that's the best option for them. As far as the wide receivers and everything go, Cortland Sutton has been very good this year, top 15 in terms of fantasy points. And it really hasn't mattered who's the quarterback. So I think that continues for him, and that he should at least, in half-point PPR, I could see him getting at least 10 points, which really is a solid outing. It's going to give you top 20, or about top 20 to top 30 production if he scores 10 points. So I think that he can put up that this week. Fant, I think, is a dart throw play in terms of tight end. As far as the Bills go, the Broncos defense has been very good as well. Again, they've been very good against quarterbacks and against wide receivers. Not as great against running backs and tight ends. But Josh Allen's running ability, I think, keeps him as a fantasy starter this week. Top 15 quarterback. I hope that Singletary gets a little more ball security. Ended up not losing 2 fumbles, but fumbling twice in the game last week. And so hopefully if he's able to hold on to the ball a little bit better, I think that he gets more involved in the passing game. John Brown has been kind of a revelation this year in terms of his receiving ability. And I don't really honestly, I don't trust Dawson Knox at tight end. So I think that Brown could be a solid wide receiver 2 or 3. So in this one, I'm probably going to go with the Bills on this one, but I think that, again, this could be a very low-scoring game.
Right.
I'm going to say 14-10 Bills over the Broncos.
Initially, that was my score, but the more I listened to you, I thought 16-13 is where I was going to head with it. And Singletary, if he can get some yards, that'll help Buffalo's cause, but I'll go 16-13. I don't see a lot of points being scored there. 2 teams accustomed to playing in cold weather in the outdoors. Well, that's what you have pretty much written all over it. Don't know what the weather is like, but it'll be cold. Now, the Giants against Chicago. The big question is will Mitch Trubisky play?
From all indications, he was a full participant in practice today. So I think that Trubisky is the one who is going to be starting. The Giants' defense has struggled in pretty much all aspects of preventing fantasy points except against the tight ends. And so I think that really since the Bears don't really have a tight end to speak of that's productive for fantasy options, I think that hopefully Montgomery should be in for a good game. If they can really get him involved. The run blocking has not been good overall for the Bears, and I think that's part of the struggles that Montgomery has had. Just the blocking has not been great. Cohen, I think if they just get him involved in the passing game, I think that they can provide a very good balance in this offense. The play calling has just been horrible. So as far as the Giants go, the Bears have struggled against the run, so hopefully Barkley can get things going, considering he was the number 1 pick for a lot of people, number 1 overall pick for a lot of people in a lot of fantasy drafts this year. And so Shepard is back as far as we can tell, and so he should provide a good option for wide receiver. He's about the only guy for the most part that I trust to put up steady numbers if he is healthy. We're still not completely sure if Ingram is going to be healthy for this week. So in this one, I think that I'm probably going to go, I could see the Giants winning this one, to be completely honest. But I want to almost take the safety of the Bears just because defense. So I think I'm going to go with the Bears in this one. 17-13 Bears over the Giants.
Yeah, I'll go Bears 19-14. I know how tough that wind is out in Chicago, having covered many a Lions-Bears games over there. Whether they redid the building or not, the structure's still there. The field is there in Lake Michigan, isn't going anywhere. So 19-14 favorite Chicago. All right, Pittsburgh against Cincinnati. We're still dealing with another Ohio team against Pittsburgh, but this one is winless.
I think in this one, I think the Steelers can still pull off this win, even going into Cincinnati. I don't see the Bengals winning this one. Ryan Finley, I know that they were hoping that he would, provide a little lightning in a bottle with the changeover to him from Andy Dalton. I want to say that he was a 3rd or 4th round pick. I like him coming out of South Carolina, but it just really hasn't translated so far in the season. Mixon finally got in the end zone for the first time, I want to say, since week 1, which was good to see for people that drafted him in the 2nd round. But they don't really have a whole lot of receiving options for Finley in general for the Bengals. And they give up the Bengals give up so many points. Their 3rd most amount of points in terms of the quarterback. They give up the 4th most amount of points to running backs. They're very middle of the road against wide receivers. And so I think that Rudolph should be able to make some decent connections with James Washington, his former Oklahoma State teammate. I think that they could really get that going. Jalen Samuels, I think, is a very good start this week. Could put up a lot of points because of his receiving out of the backfield. So I think that the Steelers in this one are going to pull it off. I'm going to say 24-10 Steelers over the Bengals.
Yeah, I have Pittsburgh winning 21-13. So, all right, Carolina against New Orleans. At least the only thing we know about this game is it's indoors. And can the Saints put together another good game now that Drew Brees is getting back into it?
I think that they can. I honestly think that the Saints win this one, and they're one of the few teams that can really dethrone, I guess, the 49ers from the top. I mean, really, it's the Packers, the 49ers, the Saints, and the Seahawks are pretty much the cream of the crop in the NFC. And I think that the Saints really should bring it to the Panthers this week. The defense has been much better as of late. Christian McCaffrey is still going to get his points. It doesn't matter who he's gone up against. He's still got his points in terms of fantasy. I think that DJ Moore should do all right in this game, especially considering that the Saints have lost Marshawn Lattimore for a little bit. So I think that DJ Moore should have a solid game fantasy-wise, provide possibly wide receiver 2 numbers. Moving over to the Saints, the Panthers are terrible against running backs, giving up the 3rd most amount of fantasy points to running backs. They average letting running backs score 10 points over their projections. So Alvin Kamara should go hog in this game, and really should provide the value that everyone was hoping for when they drafted him in the top 5 at the beginning of the season. So I think Breeze has a solid game. Kamara should be great. Michael Thomas should continue his record-setting paces this week for receptions, and so I have the Saints winning this one over the Panthers. Let's go. Let's say 27-14.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I'll just differ with you on the score just a little bit to keep it real. 30-13 in favor of New Orleans. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, I missed that.
That's all right. 30-13 in favor of.
30-13, okay.
All right, so let's go to Oakland and the Jets. No, we're not talking